So at this point, we're ready to start talking about the reconnaissance step in our methodology process. And reconnaissance is basically just going to offer us a method for gathering information. Reconnaissance can be broken down into two categories. So we're going to start off first talking about passive reconnaissance. This is basically gathering information in a non-intrusive manner. After we define and put some pretty good concepts with passive reconnaissance, we're going to move over to gathering information with various passive reconnaissance tools such as Whois and other web-based research tools. So after a quick review of some available options there, we're going to talk about active reconnaissance. Active reconnaissance is going to take passive just a step further, where we're actually touching systems and have a very limited possibility of being discovered throughout the reconnaissance and discovery process. So we're going to be a little bit more interactive here, and after we've defined some concepts, we're going to move on over into some of the tools and methods available when performing active reconnaissance. After it's all said and done, we're going to put it all together into a true reconnaissance methodology step and see how it can help us in our ultimate goal. And finally, we'll go through a quick demonstration of some things we might perform when doing reconnaissance in the wild. So to start things off, we're going to talk about passive reconnaissance. And the overall concept here is we want to gather as much information as we can based on our target. And our reconnaissance methods are going to differ depending on that target. Some examples we have here of targets are companies, networks, users would be a target, groups of users, departments, or even so much as an organization like a government entity, or depending on who is hiring us on for that penetration testing job. The general idea about passive reconnaissance is it's generally going to take place in a black box scenario, or maybe as part of the contract for a white box scenario just from an informational standpoint. But overall, we want to avoid being detected, and that's why we call it passive reconnaissance. As a general rule, following the guidelines of passive reconnaissance, you have a 0 chance of getting caught for the most part. As long as you don't do anything that actually moves over that line into active reconnaissance, you're not going to draw any attention to yourself. And we're usually going to be targeting publicly available information. And sometimes information shouldn't be publicly available, but is. There are actually a lot of sources out there available for information that's freely available for the public and won't raise suspicion. Examples of these might include company websites, exchange commissions, any type of business tracking system that handles complaints and compliments, any type of published company literature. Job postings are definitely a huge one, as well as partner sites that might exist out there and contain information about various companies. So as you can see, passive reconnaissance can net us quite a bit of information with allowing us to be as low profile as possible and kind of start getting that feel and the idea of what our target is going to look like. So the type of information that can be commonly found when performing passive reconnaissance is going to include things like names of company officers, addresses of locations such as data centers or various operational centers. Often there will be inclusive information about networks and connectivity as far as business is concerned between partners, as well as types of systems used. And this is usually found when researching through job postings and the background information on some of the higher level executives. We can even discover information about owned domain names by that company and IP address spaces and subnets where they reside. So oftentimes you can track a company down to a subnet that's registered through a certain group, is a certain location, and based on the information we get, we can nail down the names of all the executives, the phone numbers to customer service and those executives in some scenarios, as well as the physical location, address, and network information, possibly even server operating system and web languages. With all of that information combined, we can provide a pretty effective social engineering attack against a company, calling into customer service, dropping a couple of high-level executive names, mentioning a few technical details, and before you know it, you're connected in to a network engineer with a direct line who may not be up to speed on security practices. So at this step alone, we're already to a point where we could attack a certain organization or group of people.